In the coaching and consulting world, everyone talks about success, but few talk about what it really takes to get there. I'm Kevin Holly, and this is Coaches Unplugged, where we pull back the curtain and have honest conversations with the people shaping the industry. In each episode, you'll hear how top coaches and consultants built their businesses, faced their challenges, and continue to grow, both in impact and in mindset. No fluff, no pretense, just real stories, real lessons, and real talk about what it takes to build something that lasts. Today, we have a very special guest. He's the founder of Grace Strategic Services, where he coaches executives, strengthens teams, and guides organizations toward meaningful growth. He's a powerhouse in leadership and strategy, having spent 22 years as a commissioned officer in the U.S. Army, leading, planning, serving overseas, and shaping future strategists. After the military, he stepped into the private sector, served as a VP, and eventually launched his own firm, helping CEOs, nonprofits, and businesses transform how they lead and perform. He's also a John Maxwell certified coach with advanced degrees in leadership and international relations, and a mentor and board leader committed to developing people. Please help me welcome strategist, coach, educator, and trusted advisor, Ted Davis. Thanks for joining us, Ted.
Well, thank you, Kevin. I appreciate the introduction. It must have been my mother who wrote that. But thank you for all
Absolutely.
that glowing review. I just hope I can meet that guy someday.
Thank you so much once again for joining us. Very happy to have you here on the show today and looking forward to our conversation. Ted, if you want to kind of just get started and share with our audience a little bit about your role and how you got started and how your current role fits into the
Yeah.
bigger picture at Grace for Success.
Well, thanks. I think how I got started as a coach and a consultant and a trainer, all three, actually started while I was still on active duty. I think as an active duty Army officer, as a leader in general, but specifically as an Army officer, your leadership has got to include coaching and mentoring people. How do you develop young men and women? How do you mold organizations? How do you shape teams and cast vision with clarity so people know what they're moving towards. So they're very clear about what their purpose and function and processes and outcomes are the desired outcomes are going to be. So I think that was a solid foundation. But then my last 4 years on active duty, I had the very pleasant privilege of being an instructor at the Army's Command and General Staff College here at Fort Leavenworth, Kansas. And one of my roles was to be an academic counselor and evaluator. An ACE is what we called it. And in that capacity, for all 4 years, I had 16 Army officers, 16 majors, for whom I was their primary coach and advisor. So it was focused on what was their career going to look like, and put the education they were going through in a context of what does this mean for the next 10 to 15 years of active service that they have. So I got to do that and it was really the roots of how to coach. And we had training in how to do that because we weren't, it was different from being a commander. Commander, you kind of had direct authority. But as an instructor, as their kind of academic evaluator, it was a different leadership relationship. And so the training of how to influence by persuasion, more persuasion than direction. And that's not to say that Army officers just only direct. They do persuade positively, but the focus was certainly much greater on how to influence them so they made sound decisions about their career. And so that was a wonderful 4 years of dealing with that. But at the same time, as I was the academic counselor and evaluator, I was also responsible for the Army's strategist training program. We qualified people for a specific identifier as an Army strategist. And that was a wonderful opportunity to really delve into what is strategy, not just simply military strategy or political strategy and so forth, national security strategy, but what is sound strategic thinking overall. And then being able to, again, create curriculum that inspired people and gave them the knowledge, skills, values, and abilities to be Army strategists and to be strategic leaders when they left. So anyway, I think that was a very key part of how I developed as a coach. And then when I retired from active duty, I had a short-term job as a vice president for international marketing and sales for a manufacturing company. and really learned how to take all of my strategic thinking skills and abilities and change the scope. Rather than thinking about national security strategy, now I was thinking about the business strategy. So the scope was different. Vocabulary had to be changed, but these skills of analysis and synthesis and making comparisons, critical thinking. Those skills are completely transferable. So that's what I worked on in the first job I had. When that job went away, I was very fortunate. Someone asked me to get into the consulting business, and he was going to get me my first job. He did, but I went into it without any clientele. So now I really, really had to learn what is the market? How do you communicate to the market? How do you figure out, what is the one of two ways, as I've learned over the last 28 years. There's the immediate problem that people definitely want a solution to, and then there's latent problems that they don't even know they have until they see, "Oh my gosh, here's a solution that can make my life better, and I didn't even know I needed it." So I think learning that about the marketplace was key for becoming a coach, a consultant, and a trainer. And so I jumped into the marketplace, put myself out there as a strategic thinker, and little by little, I got some clients to either help them with their strategic planning, start helping them with their strategic leadership development or leader development in general. My greatest passion is helping people with strategic leadership, but I still love, first line supervisor training as well. Helping young people learn how to lead is very satisfying. So those three roles of consulting, where I'm bringing you ideas and solutions based on what your problems are. Coaching, my whole purpose in coaching is, as it says on my LinkedIn page, is about unlocking wisdom to address your biggest challenges. And that's what I've been focused on for the last couple of years, is this idea of how do you grow in wisdom, not just simply knowledge. I have a great love of learning, so I'm always studying, always trying to learn new things, always trying to develop curriculum to be able to share knowledge with people. But it's more important than that. It's not just simply sharing knowledge. They've then got to be able to acquire the cognitive skills, the emotional skills, even the physical skills sometimes of creative thinking, of problem solving, of communicating effectively. How do you lead to do that? And I think beyond that, and once you start developing the skills of not only communicating with clarity, clear, compelling, concise communications that helps people succeed, there's a point at which it's gotta become wisdom. In other words, it's not just simply you know how to apply the knowledge, it's that you have both the application of knowledge, but you have the cognitive and the emotional disciplines to develop, resilience, humility, kindness, positivity, um, there's spiritual dimension to it, I believe. So how do you develop all that so that you become holistically, as an individual, have the wisdom to be able to look at a situation, understand the nuances of the people and the events and the conditions that you're facing, and how you must step in and influence those. So that's a long-winded answer to your question. I
No,
probably got off a little bit, but
that was
that's
phenomenal.
a little
That
bit
was
about.
very, 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 deep as far as how you got started and all the factors that went into place into getting you to where you are now. I'm curious, Ted, was there a key turning point or a breakthrough moment for you? You spent several years in the Army leading and coaching people there, and then you brought that same expertise, that same skill set to the business world, like you mentioned. Can you point to one turning point or one breakthrough moment, if you will, that changed it all and kind of made things click for you?
Great question, and there really was. Given my background, again, so I grew up as an Army officer. I spent 22 years active duty, thinking strategic. I mean, I loved it. As I tell people, if I was 18 and had to do it all over again, I would still go to West Point. I would still make the Army my first career, and I'd marry the same woman. So life has been really, really good for me.
That's incredible.
But nonetheless, with that kind of background, how did I and so my friend who got me into coaching saw what the potential I had was and said, "Here's what you need to get into because you have so much to offer because of the ability to think strategically and be able to teach and to coach and so forth." So he saw the potential and encouraged me to get into it, which I did. But for a while, I kept thinking, "Okay, what can I possibly share with a businessman who's already successful?" And they must have learned it. Well, come to find out, a lot of them didn't. A lot of them were successful despite themselves. A lot of people were successful because the markets were favorable or whatever it was. But certainly, there was still room for people to develop as a leader, to develop that skills to influence other people with compelling behavior, to be able to sustain the organization and not consume the organization as you achieve strategic success financially. So that's number one. I learned was wow, there's a lot of room, but nonetheless, yeah, it's kind of when will I know I'm good enough? And the turning point, and this gets now to the kind of the answer your question, that trigger moment. I went to meet with one of my coaching clients, marvelous gentleman. This guy's a self-made millionaire. I mean, he is a case study in how do you start out with an idea and you get into retail and you got into warehouse wholesale pricing, and he's just a marvelous businessman. By the time I met him, it was worth several $1,000,000. Had 4 or 5 locations to his business. He was just absolutely the epitome of what I wish I was gonna be. This guy, I mean, what can I possibly tell him? And so it was probably 6 or 7 months into our engagement, and then when I arrived, he said, "Gosh, I'm so glad you're here. I have been looking forward to talking with you. I wanna sit down, I wanna pick your brain." And when Dennis said that to me, I thought, "Wow, okay, if Dennis wants to pick my brain, number 1, have at it." But it was finally the thing I needed to hear where, okay, offers I'm obviously offering something of value because this self-made millionaire sees a value in what I again, it goes back to this idea of unlocking the wisdom. He saw not that I had the business finesse, that he had it in spades, but he saw the intellectual capacity, he saw the inquisitiveness, the, creative, problem solving. He saw something that said, "This is a thought process. This is a level of strategic thinking that I need," and he wanted to learn it from somebody who he came to respect. And so when I realized that I had earned his respect and had earned his trust, not only that he trusts me in the sense of my integrity, but he trusted me in a sense of the knowledge and the insights that I could share. That really became a turn. I think after that point, I said, "Okay, I am in the right profession. I am fully capable of doing this. Let's go get it." Yeah, so that was my great turning point.
That's awesome. That's awesome. And, especially I'm sure you were a lot uh, less seasoned in your career at that point. And like you said, your only thought at that point was, what can you teach him, him being such a successful business person? And he saw in you what you didn't realize already existed, which is awesome.
Yeah, it was a marvelous relationship working with he and then with his staff, with his whole company, and it really helped me as I've worked with clients now that are tremendously successful. But to be able to have candid, confidential conversations, and this goes across the board, whether it's a new leader or a seasoned leader, to be able to develop someone, to develop, you've got to be reflective. You got to really look at the leader has got to look at themselves. What's working? What's not working? Who am I? What's my character? How am I relating to other people? What are my quote strengths? What are my weaknesses? What are my blind spots? To really become a successful leader, I think you've got to be very reflective about yourself, about your organization. I think the three keys to being a successful leader is number one, you got to know yourself. You have to know yourself. What are your, as I said, your weaknesses, your self limiting beliefs? How do you make decisions? What's your emotional disposition? Well do you manage your emotions? Are you emotionally intelligent? Are you positive and so forth? So you got to number one, know yourself. Number two, you've got to know your people. What's their morale like? What are their decision making processes like? What are their personalities like? How do you communicate them? What are their goals, their objectives? So you've got to know your people both individually and collectively, because leadership is always about a relationship between the leader and the follower. So you've got to know you've got to know your people, you've got to know your followers. But then thirdly, you got to understand the organization because the organization is the context for that relationship. So that relationship between the leader and the follower takes place in the context of what's the organization's mission, its vision, its values, its organizational culture. So you've got to really understand what's your organizational culture, what's working about it, what's not working about it, and how do we move it forward. You've got to understand how people see, what do they perceive, think, and feel? Those are the three action verbs of organizational culture. What do people perceive, think, and feel about the marketplace, about the clients, about the consumers, about their team members, about their profession, so forth. So you've got to be able to create that. So the three keys, I think, to being a successful leader: know yourself, know your people, know your organization, because that organization is the context for that relationship. And so
That's
I think
incredible.
that as a leader, what I saw, and particularly in that comment from Dennis, once I recognized, okay, I do have something to offer, I became much more reflective. Okay, what do I have to offer? What more can I learn to offer more value? What can I perfect? So I've been a lifelong learner. That's, I was in my 60s when I finally worked on my doctorate, earned a doctorate in strategic leadership because I've had a lifelong
Congratulations.
learning, a desire to learn. But with that comes a lifelong desire to teach, to share, to move forward. So that's why I'm both, all three, consultant, coach, and trainer, because it's that sharing of ideas, casting a vision so that people can see themselves not only as they are, but what they can become. What
That's so very true. What everything that you're sharing, even up to the what you mentioned about having to know yourself, know your people, and know the organization, because a lot of that is missed, especially in this day and age where everything is so reliant on technology. And, especially for coaches and consultants, we have to keep that human element involved to remain effective. So very, very powerful words there. Now you've been,
Well,
of course, with
the
your
way you
company.
say
I'm
that, I
sorry, go ahead.
appreciate. No, I appreciate that you're focusing on that, not only knowing yourself, knowing your people, knowing your organization, and then you expanded it and talked about knowing kind of the marketplace, what's taking place. And I think that's as part of knowing your organization, you've got to know its strategic environment, internally and externally. And in this day and age, I think if you're going to be a successful coach or a trainer or a consultant, you must learn how to use artificial intelligence. I'm enrolled in a program now where I'm trying to develop the skills that it takes to understand what current state of advanced artificial intelligence, what it can do for us, because it's really a tool. No, it's not a creative thinking. It's not going to be creative in the sense of seeing two unrelated things and putting them together. I mean, AI is large language models, and it's looking for patterns. So it's looking for patterns. It can do a great job, and it may see patterns that we don't see. But nonetheless, the art of creativity is you take A and Z who seem totally unrelated, but you can find the connection and create something new out of it. Well, I don't think AI is there yet, nor is AI has a social authenticity to it. It's not a social entity. So it cannot replace us as human beings. Nonetheless, because it is a large language model, it can process so much information so quickly. And as I'm learning how to use it and using it in the context of coaching, I'm learning more about how to examine what's working and what's not working with a client. When I can go in there and put, okay, hey, here's our last 5 conversations, what patterns that you're emerging. Wow, okay, I didn't see this was coming. Um, that was great insight. What should I be asking? So it is providing fascinating analysis and fascinating tools to be able to be a better coach, to ask better questions. So I think that's one of the things that, regardless if you're a trainer, a coach, or a consultant, you absolutely in this day and age get ahead of the game and start learning how to use AI to both further your field, if you're going to be in our field of coaching, consulting, and training, but also to understand how our clients are going to use it. Be the solution, unless you're going to be purely a consultant and purely use AI to solve their problems. But for what I do as a consultant and helping people with their organizational design and their organizational functions, their organizational culture, I'm probably not going to be their AI consultant. Nonetheless, I can use it as a tool to help me. So I think that's one, and thank you for triggering that, because I think that's an important thing that I would advise. If you haven't started, start, you still, it's a couple hours left today. You can still get started today
For sure, for
at learning
sure.
AI.
So let's talk about that, Ted. So what are some ways that you've been able to successfully use AI in your business to help move it along?
Thank you. Great question. I've used it in a couple different ways. One of it kind of as a consultant or trying to market it. There were 5 different tools I had. One was on market analysis, one was on financial analysis. So 5 different tools that excuse me, so I developed what's called a quiz funnel on business mistakes. What mistakes might you be making? So you complete this 9-question quiz, and, it'll kinda give you an idea. Okay, here's where you're have a weakness, here's where you're strong, so forth, and here's a tool that might help. So if it's a tool that reveals, so you take the quiz and if it says, you're not doing very well in setting clear objectives and you're planning your goals and your objectives, here's a tool that can help you do that. Or if it's you're not evaluating the market well enough, well, here's a tool to do that. So I already had a framework to do it, but I wanted to polish it and make it even more useful. And so I plugged it into my AI tool, uh, worked it with a couple different prompts of what I wanted it to do. And again, this is the key thing you've got to learn about using AI is how to write the prompts because it's only going to deliver what you ask it to do. So learning how to do that, that was a great way of developing some resource material that I can provide to people, some tools. So that was the first thing that it embellished. It embellished what I started with and made it better. And it made it better because I asked the right prompts, and I think that's what you have to do. Just recently, I've just, as again, I'm studying it more and more as a coach, went in and based on some of the training I'm going through, I said, well, ask, you put the input, say, here's my comments, here's the summary of the last 3 meetings with 3 different clients. What patterns are you seeing? It was fascinating because it saw patterns for each of the 3 people and patterns from my own behavior, which I thought was quite helpful when it started analyzing not only here's what you're doing as a coach in the pattern of your questioning, the pattern of your comments, but then how does that match up? How does it align with what the 3 clients needed uniquely? So the patterns, it was fascinating that they shared patterns, but in a unique manner, if that makes sense. Yes, they
Absolutely.
were in a pattern, but yes, they were unique. So to see the difference and the commonality was key insight that I've learned how to use using AI.
That's very interesting. So, with you having used it in your own business and it's been successful for you, what challenges would you say overall? Would you say that AI is a challenge for coaches and consultants right now? Or if not, what are the challenges that you see most coaches and consultants struggling with in this day in
Yeah, well,
2025?
I think I think you're absolutely right. You've gotta as much as I think AI is the wave of the future, you must learn how to use it. You cannot totally trust it because it is not gonna be perfect. You've gotta proofread it, you've gotta check it, you must read it. You must look at what you get back. You can be fascinated, "Wow, this is great insight," but also watch because there have been a few times it was off the mark, and you've gotta be able to recognize it. That's the number 1. And number 2, I think you've gotta make sure that you always keep it as a tool that helps drive your success, and it is not the thing that's driving success. I mean, you still gotta be engaged because whether it's coaching or training or consulting, I think all 3 of them, it's still a human event. There's still human emotion involved, and I think, particularly in coaching and leader development in general, again, you've gotta allow people to find a safe place. Where is the safe place that they can have candid, confidential conversations? So it is safe to be reflective because you as a coach or a trainer, you're not gonna be judgmental. You are going to ask challenging questions, but not condemning questions. You want them to think, but you're not trying to condemn how they're thinking or what the content is. And I think that takes some development. How do you ask those questions? And one of my favorite books by Edgar Schein is Humble Inquiry. And I recommend this to all coaches. Read it, Humble Inquiry. And his whole idea is do more questioning and less talking. In other words, don't try to solve the problems, ask the right questions that help people lead to it. And I think that's the fine art of coaching. I think that a good coach knows how to ask the right question at the right time, with the right words, with the right passion, with the right tone, all to get someone to the right outcomes. And so knowing how to do that, I think it requires humility. And his key to it, he says, the humble inquiry is asking because you really want to know and you've not heard it before, and you're able to convey it. So it's easy to say, well, that's the purpose of it. You want to ask sincerely, but what does that sound like? And so you really got
Right.
to practice. I think one, you got to be genuine, and to cause somebody to feel like this relationship, the relationship I have with my coach or my consultant or my trainer, if it's one on one, it is a safe place for me to be candid. I am not going to be judged. I'm not going to be condemned. I'm going to be encouraged and I'm gonna be challenged. I think that the acronym I think, that applies to us as coaches particularly is ACE, ACE. We wanna accept people as they are, challenge their thinking, and then encourage them along the way.
Mm.
So that ACE skill, and it goes right back to what I think, Shine talked about in Humble Inquiry. You've gotta be able to ask these questions in such a way that it's safe to be challenged, because you convince the person that you're there to help them, to encourage them. And sometimes that means you gotta ask, tough questions. It doesn't always feel good, you're not there to make them always feel good, you're there to help them feel safe, that they'll reveal themselves and move forward.
For sure. That's very, very powerful. ACE, accept people for who they are, challenge them, and encourage them along the way is literally all coaches and consultants. It's all we do, right? That's the basis of our purpose. So very, very powerfully stated there. As far as the industry as a whole, right? We talked about some of the challenges that coaches and consultants are facing right now. You also shared a little bit about what's working well for you, which is great to hear. What do you see as the biggest opportunities for improvement, and what's been the most frustrating thing for you in your business?
Well, I think the most frustrating thing for me has been relying on word of mouth referrals and not seeing as much success in either print or radio or other, what do you call it, marketing communications techniques. I've not had as much success in other techniques other than referrals from current clients or other consultants and so forth. Now, it's been successful. I've been at it for 28 years, so obviously I was getting enough referrals, but I think this day and age, I really need to be able to focus. So my challenge personally is even in this late stage of where I'm at is perfecting my marketing communications, particularly in the digital age, how to do a better job positioning my upfront thing. Like if you look at my line on LinkedIn, it's unlocking leadership wisdom for peak performance. I like to think that and then there's a second one, helping managers become leaders and leaders reproduce themselves for growth. Are those compelling? I think they are, but that doesn't mean everybody else does. So I think in finding that's always going to be the challenges. And I've had so many experts. Some people say you got to put in numbers. So one guy said, yeah, you're going to get 27% growth and so forth. That went flat for me anyway. It may have worked for others, but it was flat for me. Finding the right digital message for me right now, that's kind of where my challenge is, I've been at it for 28 years. I wanna keep going. People ask me, "When are you gonna retire?" My answer is, I don't find the word retirement in the Bible, so retirement isn't in the wings. However, at my age, I can sense where I'm going to be more and more physically limited. My body is not nearly as young as my mind. Anyway, so I think, you never wanna rest on your laurels. You gotta keep thinking about what's happening in the marketplace, what's happening in me too, and that's the other thing I've been learning is, yes, there's a need to solve people's problems, and what are they, and go find, here's the solution. But now that I've been at it for long, I know what I have to offer. Now let me find the people who need what I have to offer, and that's who I wanna target. So I'm changing it up a little bit. Rather than finding people and that's where we're in the early stages. I mean, I got into, employee opinion surveys, and I've loved doing it, but it was because somebody had a need. "Oh, I need survey," and so forth. "Okay, let me go find out, I'll do it for you." And sure enough, I went and found it and learned how to do it and applied it, and have done a great job with employee, engagement surveys. But that was because there was a need, and I was gonna find a solution and apply it. I'm switching it up because I've been in it long enough. Okay, here's what I have to offer. Now, who needs this? And that's now my clientele. So I just gotta change the wording of how I approach the marketplace and find new clients.
I will say that's phenomenal. I know you've been in business for almost 30 years now. Is that correct?
28.
Yeah, and
Just
it's
started our
been
in fact, I guess I started our 29th year now.
that's awesome. and it's been generally focused on referral marketing, which
Yeah,
has been successful for you. But like you said, your biggest challenge now is looking to explore other avenues to continue to grow in this digital age.
it really is. Um,
It's awesome.
I think it's still rewarding. I think one of the things that I would encourage anyone to do is, really come to grips with and answer the question, why am I here? What's my whole purpose in life? But that function, that purpose can change over time. I mean, my purpose as a 22-year-old just graduating from West Point, it was pretty clear. And I felt it. I mean, I loved being a soldier. I felt a calling to be a professional Army officer. And again, as I said, if I was 18, had to do it all over again, I'd do the same thing. People ask me, "Do I ever miss it?" And I've been retired from active duty now for almost 30 years. I still miss it, even today. So that was my first calling, and I had a clear purpose, but there was a season to it. There was a time where my active duty days needed to come to an end, and I had to realize that and say, "Okay, now it's time to move on to the next thing." And I think what my calling was in the early days of being a coach, trainer, and consultant and what it is today has changed. So I would encourage people to find their sense of calling and be willing to accept it may change as you get older and get wiser. The target of the beneficiary, how you serve people. I think in one thing that we all share in common, the greatest calling we can have is serving people in some way, shape, or form. And who I serve today is different from who I served in 1996 when I retired from active duty, which was even at that time, at 1996, it was a little bit different as I closed my career, Army career. It was different from when I was a 22-year-old lieutenant, 23-year-old lieutenant. So that's one of the things I encourage people to do.
That's awesome.
What's your calling? What's your calling in life, and how does it change? Maybe a little bit, but it's going to change as you age and you mature, and um, yeah, as you grow in wisdom, have the wisdom to be able to modify exactly who you're serving.
Incredible. Ted, what's next for you? Where do you see Grace for Success in the next 6 to 12 months? What's the next stepping
Well,
stone?
the next 12 months, thanks for asking. Bought into a new tool I'm going to use to help business leaders grow their business. So I want to form mastermind groups of business leaders who want to grow their business and are willing to take deep dive into understanding who and what they are as a business, and that working together, having the brain power of many. So I want to form mastermind groups that will help leaders and managers grow their businesses. And then secondly, I want to launch my online leadership training platform. My approach to
Love it.
leadership training is a little bit different from others. One of the first things I want people to believe and come to accept, if you're going to be a leader, start by accepting yourself as a professional. Even on day one, it may not be that you know a lot, that you've experienced a lot, but you're a young professional leader who's about to grow. It doesn't mean I've been a leader for 60 years. It started when I was in grade school. It was when I first started getting leadership training. I didn't know it at the time, but that's what it was. But anyway, so I think you've got to really identify as a professional. What I mean by a professional is number one, there's a selection process. The selection process may be just simply your boss is going to give you a title or a position, but within that, should be some leadership, not just simply managing resources, managing time and so forth, but leading people, influencing them. There's a unique body of knowledge. You, as a leader, you need to understand human behavior. What causes people to be motivated? What causes people to react? So you've been selected, you've got a body of knowledge you must learn, and that's about human behavior. And number three, that I think makes it a profession, is you're going to be held to a higher standard. And so, what I encourage leaders to do from day one, adopt that mindset. I am a professional. I'm starting my professional journey as a leader. Okay, now let's start learning. Or if you've been at it, even as old as I am, I've been in a leadership position, leaders, and that's going to be part of my platform.
That's exciting for sure. So a mastermind session, a mastermind group rather, if you will.
Absolutely.
That's
So, if
awesome.
anybody wants to get a hold of me, they can call me, send me a text, 913-306-1499. That's the quickest and
Beautiful.
easiest way to get a hold of me.
Great, great. Are there any other any avenues that you have that you'd like to mention for our listeners where they can connect with you and keep up with any insights or trainings that you have?
Absolutely. Well, you can follow me on my LinkedIn page. You just go in and type in Ted Davis, Grace for Success. You'll find my LinkedIn profile and all that stuff. And then my website is grace for the number four success.com, www.grace4success, that's the number four success.com. And then my email address, Davis, just one D, TEDAVAS at grace4, again, the number four success.
Awesome. Awesome. Ted, you've poured a wealth of wisdom into our audience today, and we definitely appreciate that. There's going to be so many tidbits from this episode, and I'm sure our listeners are going to be overloaded with value from what you've shared. So we certainly appreciate that, and thank you for taking the time. And to our listeners, thank you for listening and for being part of a conversation that's redefining what it means to grow, lead, and create impact. If today's episode resonated, please share it, follow along, and keep the energy moving forward. Because the future of coaching and consulting, we know, isn't written by chance. It's written by those willing to evolve. I'm Kevin
Right.
Holly. And until next time, keep building something extraordinary.